Let's talk now, though, to Dr. Paul Stott, Head of Security and Extremism at Policy Exchange. An extraordinary story today doing the rounds about two paedophiles who have won anonymity for life, effectively, because they've threatened to kill themselves if anybody finds out who they are, or, in fact, if anybody can work out what they've done. And this is one of those very, very hot subjects at the moment, because, of course, if paedophiles are living anywhere near where children are, some parents believe they should know that that person is actually nearby. Let's talk to Dr. Paul Stott to find out what's going on. Paul, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
This is something I've talked about quite a lot in the past, because you'll probably know this, but in America they have a register of sex offenders, and it's freely available to anybody on a website who wants to go and look at it. And if you live in a particular town, you can simply put in your street or put in your neighbourhood, and you can see exactly who has committed what crime and where they're living.
Yes, Mike, the Americans take a much more open approach to information. You can also, for example, go on the Department of Corrections website and put in information about, for example, a terrorist prisoner, and the details will come up, length of sentence, which prison they're being held in, all that sort of thing. We've taken a much more restrictive view. There may well be reasons for that, but of course in examples such as this case, the public, quite rightly, will not understand what is going on.
Yes, and I mean, the thing is, these people who are involved in this particular story, one involves a man who's admitted 22 offences involving possessing, distributing and making indecent child images. His identity was revealed sort of inadvertently following a legal challenge by a reporter, but then the judge has reversed his ruling and granted lifetime anonymity, which doesn't seem right to me.
No, I think there's been cases of lifetime anonymity. The best-known case would be Mary Bell, who I think committed murder when she was a child.
Yes.
And there may well be a case where, you know, people are under 16, under 18, for example, at the time of offence, of maintaining that anonymity. But the idea of lifetime anonymity for an adult, and in particular with a type of offence like this, where unfortunately reoffending is all too common, it sounds bizarre on the face of it. On the information we're getting, it sounds surreal.
Right. And is this a problem for the whole of the sort of the justice system, if you like, in terms of the reasons why anonymity is granted? I mean, is it done on a case-by-case basis, or are you assumed to be anonymous until somebody asks for you not to be?
It's pretty much on a case-by-case basis, and I mean, this is one of the reasons why we need strong local media, people badgering away, carrying out investigations and research, because where people can cover up their crimes, they unfortunately will.
Yeah, I mean, it really does seem to be quite a remarkable thing. The other story we wanted to talk to you about is the one about prison gangs, in particular Jihadi prison gangs, which I know is a special subject of yours, forcing people in prison to convert to Islam, threatening them with violence. This is a new investigation that's reported on this. Tell us a bit more.
Well, this is a new report on faith in the public sector, faith and how the government should interact with faith groups and with religion, by a guy called Colin Bloom. But the particular section you're talking about is quite a concerning section on the prison system. And I'm afraid here Colin Bloom in some ways hasn't told us anything new. One of the things we seem to specialise in this country is identifying problems, producing reports, and then a couple of years later identifying the same problems in a new report. And the sort of issues Colin Bloom's talking about in terms of prison radicalisation, extremist prisoners, gangs of prisoners allegedly forcing their faith on others. I mean, some of these have been issues in the prison system for many years and have been quite openly talked about. A report a former prison governor, Ian Aitchison, did way back in 2016, was calling for better vetting, for example, of prison chaplains. What do we get in this report? Pretty much the same recommendation. So, you know, it's more of the same old story, and the problem here is the government not taking forward solutions, I'm afraid.
I mean, you might think it would be a good idea to outlaw jihadi gangs in prison. I mean, call me old-fashioned, but surely it's not a very good thing to allow them to exist, is it?
Well, one of the things that was supposedly set up was sort of separation centres where some of the most dangerous terrorist prisoners would be isolated from the general prison system. Progress on that has been very slow. The Ministry of Justice, I think, have probably talked a better fight than they've delivered. But mistakes in this field are really serious. So back in 2020, we had what was deemed a terrorist attack in prison by two guys, Rustam Zamani and Baz Hopton, both converts to Islam. Baz Hopton, from a sort of traditional criminal background, white guy who'd converted to Islam around people who'd been followers of Anjem Choudhury, the Al-Muhajiroon group, people will remember. And these guys seem to have far too much influence in prison. They were able to mix, able to influence others, and, if you like, to be the big gang, the big guys in the prison. And the specialist centres, the separation centres, were supposed to bring that to an end. And I'm afraid we've seen very mixed progress. I think I've seen figures, just several dozen people in these isolation centres, and really it should be far more.
Yes, because I mean we've heard as well of people going into prison not being sort of terrorist trained, but then coming out of prison having been sort of radicalised by some of these gangs. Failure to identify as a Muslim, says the report, meant that at best the new prisoner would be denied protection from the dominant Muslim gang on that wing, or at worst the new prisoner would be subjected to violence and intimidation from the same gang.
Yes, there's a particular line in the report that's quite worrying. If people look at the PDF online, I think it's page 95, talks about this line of convert or get hurt. And this is used to intimidate prisoners by Islamist prisoners. And I suspect in practice they're not looking for people to be part of the day-to-day faith community. They're looking for them to submit to the gang, to submit to their particular interpretation of the faith. And, of course, in a prison environment, some guys are bigger than others, some guys are tougher than others, and people will acquiesce. And the authorities have to decide who runs the prisons.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Dr. Paul Stott, thank you very much indeed. Head of Security and Extremism at Policy Exchange there, Dr. Stott, talking about the jihadi problem in the British prisons, which seems ridiculous, doesn't it? I mean, there shouldn't be one, for heaven's sake.